morning again. Frank Clark, one of our CRF members, has a saying, which he starts and never ends, where two or three are gathered together. And he leaves it up to everybody to fill in the blanks. So I would take a cue from him, where two or three are gathered together. Welcome. I hope, though, that in spite of the fact that it is two or three, we are going to have a meaningful discussion this morning because it is the kind of thing that, and Dennis Panton would say the same thing to whoever turned up. That was his line. The kind of thing that is important for us to begin to talk about, and we are heartened by the fact that other people have, others of you have also feel that it is something important for us to talk about. We are meeting today just under 9 months after what can be described as an historic event, when the voting population of this country said in most emphatic terms that it was going to make a break with the PNM regime and elect a different body of people to form the new government of our country. But if that was the dominant thought that characterized the weeks and days leading up to and following Monday, 24th of May, it would soon give way to a more critical examination of what the changing of the guard meant in concrete terms for the governing of this country. In different ways, we all started to recall from our recent memory the words we heard night after night on the election platform, and we continue to hold those up as a standard against which to assess the reality of what we are seeing before our eyes. Of course, we all have different perspectives of what we are seeing, and the standards that we use to judge are certainly also different. But one thing that I am picking up is that there are people in every walk of life, in every community of our society, who have moved away from the what we could do talk and have made it their business to keep a close watch on what the government does, or alternatively, what it does not do. A coalition government is not one that our recent history has prepared us to feel comfortable with. Over the last 5.5 decades, we have been schooled to view nationalism, national identity, nation building, anything to do with nation, as being logically tied to and defined by a single unit. A national movement, it is called, probably the national movement, and to be even more specific, the People's National Movement. At various times over those 50-odd years, there were rumblings against that political status quo. And from time to time, alternative formations have emerged to challenge it. But all of us know how it all played out eventually. The sometimes overt, sometimes covert context among a few largely self-seeking protagonists to determine which side will control the national spoils has seen the strengthening of a racial divide in our national politics. Dennis Panton's rationale on why we need to reform the Constitution provides, in my view, the best possible framework for understanding this situation. And let me just quote a little on what Dennis said. Morning, brother. As a plural society, we have a situation where undeniably people tend to have group affiliations. This is Dennis talking. And these tend to be reflected in our political choices and those who we take power. As a result of this, we have a situation in which at the end of elections, some people feel symbolically that they are in power, and some people feel symbolically that they are out of power. You combine both of these, and in effect what we have is a winner-take-all form of governance. So, and he was giving the rationale for the second slogan of CRF, which we have come up with is from winner-take-all and all to all take win. What we are grappling for is a constitution in which all feel that they have something, they have won something at the end of the day, that in some way they are represented in the portals of power and in the portals of governance. The series of discussions that we, the CRF, are launching today, therefore, is intended to provide a space for the people of our country to share perspectives and deepen understandings about the new government structure in the political landscape of Trinidad and Tobago, in particular since it is not one that the last 50 years has prepared us to feel comfortable with. And we must look at the new government structure even as we reserve our right to dissect and assess the actual workings of the government itself. The series is also intended to mark the 10th anniversary of our organization, the Constitution Reform Forum. There is a direct link between what we are doing today and what those founding members did 10 years ago that should not be overlooked. 10 years ago, the country was going through a period of political tension after the 2000 election, and it was in an attempt to assist the society to get a handle on that situation that the CRF came into being. Again, going back to our brother, Dennis Pantin, to see exactly how he described how the CRF came into being, and I quote, "CRF came out of a meeting called in January 2001 at the PSA in Port of Spain. It was called by David Abdullah, and he invited representatives of trade unions, NGOs, and other interested parties like myself, meaning himself, Dennis, to a meeting there called at the rooftop of the PSA. The meeting took place in the context where the general elections of 2000 had been won by the UNC, and the Prime Minister, Mr. Pandey, had requested that the President, Mr. Robinson, appoint 6 of his losing UNC candidates as senators, and Mr. Robinson had bowed. The issue became so contentious, and I'm continuing with Dennis Pantin's words, that the society appeared now to be divided in terms of those who were supporting Mr. Robinson and those who were supporting Mr. Pandey, that is, on the basis of race. And some of us felt that the issue was not that Mr. Pandey was wrong or Mr. Robinson was wrong, but that there was a fundamental constitutional root factor which explained this particular standoff, as it were." End the quote. So the CRF was born out of a situation that brought into sharp focus the fractured nature of the politics of the country and the way it was undermining our ability to govern ourselves. Those initial members, like our brother Dennis Pantin, went even deeper to point out that it was not just a matter of the politics, but that at a more fundamental level, the people of Trinidad and Tobago had to determine whether the Constitution itself provided the society with a strong enough foundation for responding to and taking itself out of that impasse. From its origins, the CRF had made the link between the people's right to good governance and the people's right to shape their constitution in a way that allows for the formation of institutions that give the people the best chance of getting good governance. Fast forward 10 years to today. We, the current members of the CRF, know that the original mandate is still there to be addressed. And we continue to build on the foundations laid by those founding members, and in particular, on the commitment, foresight, stick-to-itiveness, clarity of thought, humility, and willingness to make spaces to bring everyone into the conversation of our former chair and still brother, Dennis Pantin. Today, the CRF is very pleased that Sister Suniti Maharaj has agreed to be the lead in this first discussion of the series on the topic, Can a Coalition Government Succeed in Trinidad and Tobago? When one looks at the path that Suniti has traveled over the last several years as a career journalist in both print and television, as a commentator on national issues, or as a media consultant, the defining quality that links all of these roles together is her commitment to ensure that we, the people, move our understandings of our world beyond the superficial and the transient, and that we look beneath the surface, that we make connections, that we know when to focus on the trees and when to step back and shift perspective to take in the whole forest. She is also very clear that we have to have a vision of staying the course for the long haul. Currently, Suniti Maharaj is the director of the Lloyd Best Institute and editor of the TNT Review. She is also the very proud mother of 2 daughters. And for me, I am very clear in my own mind that she is the person to get us all involved at the beginning of this series in some serious thinking, reflecting, and talking. So Suniti, welcome, and we are glad to have you. And so without any further ado, hand over to you.
I am quite pleased with the small turnout, actually, because I am experimenting with you. Trying to figure out as the days pass and grapple with the idea of how do we structure government for this society in such a way that it supports and promotes national reconstruction. So that is where the eye is on. It's on how do we realize our potential to be the best society that we can have, that we can be, the happiest people on the earth, able to look after ourselves. Those are the goals, and government is merely the means. And I would bet anything that the members of the CRF would have been among those who would have supported the People's Partnership. And you are among those who have been most thinking about relevant framework, constitutional framework to support the kind of society. You are among the best people in the country. You wish the best for the country, and yet you supported something that now you ask yourself, how could I have supported that? Because it has not lived up. So we all have to engage a process of doubt, really, about our own ability to appraise and to analyze and to see the strengths and the weaknesses of the things that we promote for the rest of the country. So I don't want this conversation to be too much in the abstract, although the abstract is necessarily the environment in which thought occurs. So I will take you to a meeting a few weeks ago that is a good place, I think, to start this conversation. I think you'll recall the meeting of the chairmen of the various constituent elements of the People's Partnership. That actually followed an editorial we had in the review about the coalition, about the need for the political leaders as opposed to the cabinet to decide how they need to respond to public opinion. And that meeting occurred, but the striking thing for me was at the end of the meeting, David Abdullah, of all people, spoke for the group and said, we have arrived at certain positions and we will communicate them to the political leaders. And I thought, how odd, because if the chairman had met, shouldn't they now go back to their executives of their respective parties, communicate what had transpired at this group meeting, and then have the executive speak to the membership of their parties and let the political leaders be part of that conversation. And once again, even when the need for understanding the role of politics within a government had been hinted upon, they had got an instinct that this is what we need to do, it made its way right back up to maximum leadership. Now, what we are seeing today is not very much different from what we saw in 1986 with the NAR and 87 when it collapsed. There are some differences, but I think it's useful for us to take a look at some of the parallels. And at that time, there was a discussion about a coalition politics